So in this video, we want to be able to evaluate some expressions without using a calculator. In order to do that, we need to be able to apply these basic log properties. This first set of properties that we're looking at has to do with inverse properties. Now, what it says is if I have log base b of b to the x, that equals x. Notice that if it's in this form, that the base b as well as this argument's base are both the same, and the expression is simply equal to the exponent x. Now let's see how that applies to the second property. Here it says I have a base b, and in the exponential position here is a log base b of x. The base in the log b and the base that's the base power here are both the same bases, and therefore this argument or this expression is simply equal to that argument x. So it's got to follow that pattern, in other words. Now let's look at these special properties that involve 1. And here we have log base b of b is equal to 1. Well, this one kind of makes a little bit of sense to me if you think about what it was that we just talked about over here. This property said if the base and the argument's base are exactly the same, then the expression evaluates to whatever the exponent is. Here I have two bases, or I have the base and the argument's base that are the same, and this base that I'm hovering over would be raised to then the first power. And so the expression evaluates to this exponent, which is just simply 1. The next one that's kind of special for my properties involving 1 says that if I have log base b of 1, that's equal to 0. This one kind of makes sense to me if I were to rewrite this from its log and into its exponential form like we practiced. This would be base b raised to the 0th power is equal to 1, because anything raised to the 0th power is 1. So really this is just a reverse of what we've already done. I would have to say that when you're evaluating these expressions down here, these are the two most important properties, and the ones I just talked about are just special. So let's see if we can evaluate. I have 3 examples for us right here. The first one says that I want to evaluate log base 7 of 49. Now, if I'm using those properties we just talked about, this argument here, I want to think, how can I rewrite 49 so that it is some power of 7? Because if the base 7 and the argument's base are the same, then that's how we're going to solve this. So I can rewrite this as log base 7, and 49 is 7 raised to the 2nd power. So base 7, argument 7, and therefore this would evaluate to just this exponent of 2. So that's how I can evaluate it without using a calculator. Let's try this on this next one. Here I have log base 3 of 1 over the square root of 3. There's a lot going on in this argument that we need to fix before we can evaluate it. First off, we don't want to see things written in a radical form. We want them to be written in their rational form. So I'm going to rewrite this as log base 3 of 1 over, and I can rewrite the square root of 3 in its rational form as this 3 raised to the 1/2, because 3 to the 1/2 is the same thing as the square root of 3. Now we're going to use our rules of exponents that say that if I have, if I move a base, if I move a number, if I change its position from the denominator and move it to the numerator, then it's going to change the sign on the exponent. So this is log base 3 of 3 to the negative 1/2. Because this base 3 moved up into the numerator position, which means the sign of its exponent has to change to a negative. Now I am in a position to apply this inverse property rule, which says this base 3 and this base 3 allow me to just evaluate the expression to the exponent of negative 1/2. So again, on this particular example, it's this argument right here that we had to put into a form of this in order to be able to evaluate it. Okay, now let's look at this last one. This says 3 raised to the log base 3 of 17. Remember that this was the other form of our inverse property, and it said that if this base and this base were the same number, then the expression just evaluated to the argument of 17. And that's how we're going to go about evaluating these expressions without a calculator. I encourage you to look over and practice using some earlier material or maybe something else if you can't remember or you need extra practice on how to move from a radical into a rational.